Marcus Webb sat in the back corner of the boardroom, exactly where he'd sat for the past 7 years. Same chair, same angle, same view of the parking lot through the tinted windows. The executives at the front of the room were arguing again. Voices rising, fists hitting the mahogany table, accusations flying like shrapnel. Marcus watched it all with the same expression he always wore. Calm, neutral, almost invisible. "What do you think, Webb?" The question came from David Chen, the CFO, more as a formality than genuine curiosity. Everyone knew Marcus wouldn't answer. He never did. Marcus simply nodded once, a gesture so subtle it could mean anything or nothing, and Chen moved on without waiting. This was Marcus's life. The quiet one. The background player. The man who blended into corporate beige walls like camouflage. 23 people worked in his department, and he'd bet half of them couldn't remember his first name. At company happy hours, he'd nurse a single beer in the corner while everyone else got loud and loose. At team lunches, he'd sit at the end of the table, eating his sandwich in methodical bites while conversation swirled around him like water around a stone. But here's what nobody knew. Marcus Webb was watching, listening, recording. Not with cameras or devices, with something far more dangerous, with perfect memory and absolute understanding. And for 7 years, he'd been building something in the silence, something that would change everything. Because the quietest person in the room is often the most dangerous. They see what you don't want seen. They hear what you shouldn't have said. And when they finally decide to speak, the whole world stops to listen. Before we dive into Marcus's story, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me what city you're watching from. Are you in New York, Tokyo, São Paulo, London? Let's see how global our community is. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button because stories like these drop every week. And trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Now, let's go back to where it really started. 7 years before that boardroom meeting. 7 years before everything changed. Marcus Webb was 31 years old when he started at Meridian Technologies, a mid-sized software company that specialized in data analytics for Fortune 500 clients. He'd been hired as a junior analyst, despite having credentials that should have landed him a senior position. 2 master's degrees, one in computer science from MIT, another in applied mathematics from Stanford, publications in academic journals, recommendations that called him brilliant and unprecedented. But there was always a caveat, always a however that followed the praise. Brilliant, however, he lacks presence in meetings. Unprecedented analytical skills, however, he struggles with team communication. Technically perfect, however, he doesn't fit our culture of collaboration. Marcus had learned early that being quiet was a liability in corporate America. Loud confidence beat quiet competence every single time. The guy who talked a good game would get promoted over the guy who actually did the work. It was a game, and Marcus had never learned to play it. So he'd taken the junior position at Meridian, a company small enough to overlook his communication deficiencies, because they desperately needed someone who could actually do the math. His interview had lasted 10 minutes. The CTO, Robert Harrison, had scrawled a complex algorithm on the whiteboard and asked Marcus to find the error. Marcus had stared at it for 45 seconds in complete silence. Then he'd walked up, circled 3 separate mistakes, and corrected them without saying a word. Harrison had hired him on the spot. That was 7 years ago. In that time, Meridian had grown from 200 employees to over 2,000. Their stock had increased 400%. They'd acquired 5 competitors and landed contracts with Apple, Google, and the Department of Defense. The company that had been teetering on the edge of bankruptcy when Marcus arrived was now worth $3.2 billion. And Marcus Webb was still in the same junior analyst position, making $72,000 a year. He'd watched people get promoted over him, people he'd trained, people whose work he'd corrected, people who'd taken credit for his solutions. Jennifer Rodriguez, who'd started 2 years after Marcus, was now a VP making 7 figures. She'd built her entire reputation on a predictive algorithm that Marcus had written over a weekend, and handed to her because she'd been crying in the break room about a missed deadline. Marcus hadn't minded at the time. He genuinely didn't care about recognition. He just liked solving problems. But 7 years is a long time to be invisible. 7 years is a long time to watch mediocrity get rewarded while excellence gets overlooked. 7 years is a long time to stay quiet. And something was about to break. Marcus's apartment was exactly what you'd expect from a man who'd been described as painfully introverted in his last performance review. A studio in a quiet neighborhood, furnished with precision but no personality. A desk with 3 monitors, bookshelves organized by subject and then alphabetically by author, a single plant, a succulent that required minimal interaction, no TV, no gaming console, no evidence that anyone actually lived there instead of just existed. But if you looked closer, if you were the type to notice details the way Marcus noticed details, you'd see something else. You'd see the corkboard above his desk, covered in printed emails, screenshots, and handwritten notes. You'd see the external hard drives labeled by year and quarter. You'd see the leather journal, filled with dense handwriting in a shorthand only Marcus understood. For 7 years, Marcus had been documenting everything. Every meeting, every decision, every cut corner, every ethical violation, every moment when profit was chosen over principle, not because he planned to use it, not because he was vindictive or angry, simply because it was data, and data should be preserved and understood. Marcus had watched Meridian's executives lie to clients about product capabilities. He'd seen them suppress bug reports that could have prevented security breaches. He'd documented the harassment complaints that HR buried. He'd tracked the offshore accounts where executives were hiding profits from shareholders. He'd recorded the meetings where they'd discussed destroying evidence before audits. And he'd done it all from his corner chair with his neutral expression while everyone talked over him and around him and through him like he wasn't even there. The thing about being invisible is that people forget you're in the room. They say things they shouldn't say, they do things they shouldn't do, and they never think the quiet guy in the corner is paying attention. But Marcus was always paying attention. He was about to remind them of that. The morning everything changed started like any other morning. Marcus arrived at the office at 6:47 a.m., exactly as he had for 7 years. He made coffee in the break room, 2 sugars, no cream. He sat down at his desk in the open plan office, surrounded by empty cubicles that would fill up over the next 2 hours. He opened his laptop and started working through his queue of analysis requests. At 9:15 a.m., David Chen sent out an email calling an emergency board meeting for 2 p.m. The subject line read, "Urgent DoD contract crisis." Marcus read the email once, then went back to his work. He knew what the crisis was. He'd predicted it 6 months ago in a report that everyone had ignored. The Department of Defense contract that made up 30% of Meridian's revenue was about to collapse because of a security flaw Marcus had identified and management had decided was too expensive to fix. Now the DoD had discovered the flaw during a routine audit. They were threatening to cancel the contract and sue for breach of security protocols. Meridian stood to lose not just the contract but their reputation, their other government clients, and potentially face criminal charges. The morning crawled by with unusual quiet. People were stressed, whispering in clusters, speculation running wild. Marcus kept working, methodical and steady, while chaos built around him. At 1:55 p.m., he stood up from his desk, straightened his tie, and walked to the boardroom. His heart was beating slightly faster than normal, the only outward sign that today was different. That today, after 7 years of silence, Marcus Webb was finally going to speak. He took his usual seat in the back corner, watched the executives file in, their faces tight with worry. Robert Harrison, David Chen, Jennifer Rodriguez, the entire C-suite plus the board of directors. 18 people who'd collectively ignored Marcus for 7 years. They were about to learn his name. And they were about to realize that the quiet ones are quiet for a reason. Because when you're busy talking, you're not listening. When you're busy performing, you're not observing. When you're busy taking credit, you're not actually doing the work. Marcus had been doing the work. All of it. For 7 years. He opened his laptop and waited. Robert Harrison started the meeting with the kind of panic-laced authority that comes from realizing you've made a catastrophic mistake. "We're here because the DoD is threatening to pull the contract. They've identified critical security vulnerabilities in the Phoenix platform. We need solutions, and we need them now. Ideas?" The room erupted in the predictable chaos, executives blaming each other, engineers explaining why fixing the problem would take months, lawyers discussing liability, everyone talking, nobody listening, nothing getting solved. Marcus sat in his corner, laptop open, fingers resting on the keyboard. Jennifer Rodriguez was in the middle of explaining that the vulnerabilities were unforeseeable when something extraordinary happened. Marcus spoke. "That's not true." The room went silent. 18 heads turned toward the back corner. Some of them looked confused, trying to remember who this person was. Others looked annoyed at the interruption. "Excuse me?" Jennifer's voice had an edge to it. Marcus's voice was quiet, but in the sudden silence it carried perfectly. "The vulnerabilities weren't unforeseeable. I documented them in a report submitted to engineering and executive leadership on March 14th of this year, 6 months ago." "I don't recall any such report," Harrison said. Marcus pressed a key. The large monitor at the front of the room flickered to life, displaying an email. Subject: "Critical security vulnerabilities in Phoenix platform. Immediate action required." Date: March 14th, 2024. Recipients: Robert Harrison, David Chen, Jennifer Rodriguez, and 12 others. I submitted it at 7:23 a.m. Jennifer responded at 9:47 a.m. Marcus pressed another key. Jennifer's reply appeared. "Thanks, Marcus, but we're too close to launch to make major changes. We'll address this in the next version." Jennifer's face went pale. "We were on a deadline." "The deadline was artificial," Marcus continued, his voice still measured, still quiet. "Created to accelerate the contract signing before due diligence could identify the problems. David, you're the one who moved the deadline up by 4 months. Would you like me to show the email?" David Chen had gone very still. Marcus wasn't done. For 7 years he'd been silent. Now the dam was breaking. "The vulnerabilities in Phoenix aren't the only issue. Should we discuss the falsified performance metrics in the client presentations? The suppressed crash reports? The harassment complaints that HR buried? Or should we talk about the offshore accounts where company profits have been diverted?" The room had gone from silent to suffocated. Nobody was breathing. Harrison's face had turned red. "Webb, what the hell do you think you're doing?" Marcus looked at him directly for the first time in 7 years. His expression hadn't changed, calm, neutral, almost invisible. But his eyes were different now. Sharp, focused, dangerous. "My job," Marcus said simply. "I've been doing it for 7 years. You just never noticed." He pressed another key. The monitor filled with documents, hundreds of them. Emails, reports, financial records, meeting transcripts. 7 years of documentation organized by category: security violations, financial fraud, ethical breaches, legal liabilities. Every piece of evidence Marcus had quietly, methodically collected while everyone assumed he wasn't paying attention. "This is everything," Marcus said. "Every corner you've cut, every rule you've broken, every lie you've told clients, shareholders, and employees. It's all here. Dated, verified, and backed up in 17 different locations." Harrison found his voice. "You're fired. Security, escort Mr. Webb from the building." Marcus smiled. It was small, barely there, but it was the first smile any of them had ever seen from him. "You can fire me," he said, "but in about..." He glanced at his watch. 3 minutes. This entire presentation will be automatically sent to the Department of Defense, the Securities and Exchange Commission, and the investigative teams at the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, unless you'd like to hear my alternative proposal." The room was frozen. Marcus had spent 7 years being invisible. Now he was the only thing anyone could see. "What do you want?" Chen whispered. Marcus closed his laptop. "I want to fix this company, the right way, and you're going to let me do it." For the first time in 7 years, everyone in the room was listening to Marcus Webb. Really listening. And as they did, they began to understand something terrifying. The quiet man in the corner hadn't been weak or timid or lacking in confidence. He'd been patient, and his patience had just run out. The next 72 hours moved like a controlled detonation. Marcus didn't leave the office for 3 days straight. Neither did the executive team. The boardroom became a war room, and Marcus Webb, the junior analyst who nobody had noticed for 7 years, was suddenly running the show. He'd prepared for this. Of course he'd prepared. Marcus had spent 7 years not just documenting problems but designing solutions. Every security flaw had a fix. Every fraudulent practice had a legitimate alternative. Every ethical violation had a path to correction. He'd been doing the work the entire time, building a roadmap in silence while everyone else had been performing for each other. The Department of Defense audit was scheduled to continue in 2 weeks. Normally, fixing the security vulnerabilities in the Phoenix platform would take 6 months of work. Marcus did it in 4 days. He worked through the first night with a team of engineers he'd personally selected, people who'd been overlooked like him, people who actually knew what they were doing instead of just talking about it. While the executives watched in stunned silence, Marcus tore apart code he'd helped write years ago and rebuilt it from scratch. He didn't explain his process. He didn't hold meetings to discuss approaches. He just worked, his fingers flying across the keyboard, solving problems that the company's highest-paid developers had insisted were impossible. By dawn on the second day, the security flaws were patched. By noon, Marcus had implemented 3 additional layers of encryption that made the Phoenix platform more secure than anything else on the market. By evening, he'd created documentation so thorough that even the DoD's most paranoid auditors would be satisfied. Robert Harrison watched all of this from the doorway of the boardroom, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. "How long have you been able to do this?" he finally asked. Marcus didn't look up from his laptop. "Always." "Then why didn't you?" "Because you never asked." Marcus's voice was still quiet, but there was an edge to it now. "You asked Jennifer. You asked David. You asked every loudmouth with a business degree and good hair, but you never asked the guy who actually built your entire analytics platform." Harrison had no response to that. By the 3rd day, word had spread through the company. The quiet guy from the corner had somehow taken over. He was giving orders to VPs. He was rewriting company policy. He was personally reviewing 7 years of financial records and flagging every suspicious transaction. And nobody was stopping him because everyone had seen what was in his files. Everyone knew he could destroy Meridian with a single email. But that's not what Marcus wanted. And that was the part that made the executives most uncomfortable. Marcus didn't want money. He'd rejected David Chen's offer of $5 million to delete his files. He didn't want power. He'd turned down an immediate promotion to CTO. He didn't want revenge. He hadn't contacted the media or the SEC. He just wanted the company to be what it was supposed to be. He wanted to fix what was broken. He wanted to do the right thing. It was such an alien concept to the executive team that they didn't know how to respond. On the afternoon of the 3rd day, Marcus called another meeting. This time, he stood at the front of the room. The executives sat in the chairs they'd once commanded from, now looking like students waiting for a test they hadn't studied for. Marcus connected his laptop to the monitor. "Here's what's going to happen. The DoD audit will proceed as scheduled. They'll find that every security flaw has been fixed and that our platform now exceeds their requirements. The contract will be renewed." He clicked to the next slide. "The offshore accounts will be closed. The diverted funds will be returned to the company and reported to shareholders. David, you're going to resign as CFO. Your severance will be generous, but you'll also be signing an agreement that includes full cooperation with any future investigations." Chen looked like he wanted to argue, but one glance at Marcus's laptop made him nod instead. "Jennifer, you're also resigning. However, I'm recommending a severance package that includes funding for the 3 employees whose work you've taken credit for over the years. They'll be promoted into your previous role as co-directors." Jennifer's face flushed, but she nodded. Marcus continued down the list. 3 more executives would resign. 5 would undergo ethics review, 2 would be retrained. The entire compensation structure would be audited and reformed to reward actual performance instead of visibility. The harassment cases that HR had buried would be reopened and properly addressed. And finally, Marcus said, looking directly at Robert Harrison, "You're going to establish an independent board oversight committee. Real oversight, not rubber stamping. I'll serve on it. Not because I want power, but because somebody needs to make sure this never happens again." Harrison met Marcus's gaze for a long moment. Then, incredibly, he smiled. It was a tired smile, a defeated smile, but also something else. Relief, maybe. "You could have destroyed us," Harrison said. "Why didn't you?" Marcus thought about that. He thought about 7 years in the corner chair, 7 years of being overlooked, underestimated, and ignored. 7 years of watching good people get crushed by a system that rewarded loud confidence over quiet competence. "Because destroying things is easy," Marcus said. "Building things is hard, and I like hard problems." He closed his laptop. "We're done here, get to work." As the executives filed out, stunned and humbled and maybe, just maybe, ready to do better, Marcus gathered his things. He walked back to his desk in the corner of the open plan office. Same desk, same monitors, same view of the parking lot. But something had changed. As he sat down, people were watching, not with the glazed-over indifference they'd shown before, but with real attention, with respect. Maria from accounting stopped by his desk. "Marcus, I just wanted to say thank you for what you did, for all of us." Marcus nodded once. The same gesture he'd made 1,000 times before, except now it meant something different. Now people understood that his silence wasn't weakness. His quietness wasn't absence. It was focus. And for 7 years, Marcus Webb had been focused on one thing: remembering everything, understanding everything, preparing for the moment when he'd finally need to speak. That moment had come. And when the quiet man finally spoke, the world stopped to listen. But Marcus's story was far from over, because fixing the immediate crisis was just the beginning. The real work, the hard work of rebuilding a company's culture, of changing how power operated, of proving that doing the right thing was possible, that work was about to begin. And Marcus Webb, the quiet man who'd become dangerous, was ready for it. The question was everyone else? 2 weeks after what employees started calling the reckoning, the Department of Defense completed their audit. Marcus sat in the same boardroom. Though he noticed he wasn't in the corner anymore, someone had moved his chair to the middle of the table, while the DoD's lead auditor, Colonel Sarah Matthews, reviewed her team's findings. "I'll be honest," Matthews said, her steel gray eyes scanning the assembled executives. "When we identified the security flaws we expected to find a disaster. Companies usually scramble, make superficial changes, and hope we don't look too closely." She paused. "But this is the most comprehensive security overhaul I've seen in 15 years of conducting audits." She pulled up her tablet. "Not only did you fix the identified vulnerabilities, you upgraded your entire infrastructure. You implemented encryption protocols that go beyond our requirements. You created documentation that's actually useful instead of just legally compliant. And you did it in less than 2 weeks." Harrison beamed, ready to take credit, but Matthews's attention had shifted to Marcus. "Mr. Webb, correct? I understand you led this effort." Marcus nodded once. "I also understand that you identified these vulnerabilities 6 months before our audit, and that your warnings were ignored." The room went very quiet. Matthews smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. "I've been in government long enough to know how these things work. Someone does the real work while executives take the credit. Usually, by the time we catch the problems, that person has quit or been fired." She closed her tablet. "So let me be clear. The DoD is renewing the contract, but we're also requiring that Marcus Webb be the primary technical liaison. If he leaves Meridian, we renegotiate everything." The executives looked shell-shocked. Marcus kept his expression neutral, but inside, something shifted. He'd spent 7 years being invisible. Now the Department of Defense had just made him indispensable. "There's one more thing," Matthews added. "We're recommending Meridian for 3 additional classified projects. Combined value of approximately $800 million over 5 years. But again, these contracts are contingent on Mr. Webb's direct involvement." After Matthews left, the boardroom erupted in celebration. Champagne appeared from somewhere. People were hugging, laughing, already spinning the story of how they'd turned things around. Harrison stood and raised his glass. "To Meridian's future!" Everyone drank except Marcus. He was watching Jennifer Rodriguez, who'd been retained as a consultant during the transition period. She was standing apart from the celebration, staring at Marcus with an expression he couldn't quite read. Respect? Resentment? Fear? Later, after the executives had left to continue celebrating at some expensive restaurant Marcus hadn't been invited to, old habits die hard, Jennifer approached his desk. "You destroyed my career," she said quietly. Marcus looked up at her. "No, you built your career on other people's work. I just stopped providing the foundation. I have a family, a mortgage. What am I supposed to do now?" For the first time, Marcus felt something like sympathy. Jennifer wasn't evil. She was just a product of a system that rewarded presentation over substance. "The severance package I recommended includes 2 years' salary and full benefits. That's more than fair." "Fair?" Jennifer laughed bitterly. "You sat in that corner for 7 years watching me succeed. If you were so brilliant, why didn't you speak up sooner? Why didn't you fight for recognition?" It was a good question. Marcus had asked himself the same thing many times over the years. "Because I thought the work would speak for itself. I thought competence mattered more than charisma. I was wrong." "So what changed? Why did you suddenly decide to become this?" She gestured at him, at the files still open on his laptop, at the evidence of his transformation from invisible to indispensable. Marcus considered her question. What had changed? The honest answer was that he'd reached a breaking point. 7 years of being overlooked had built up like pressure in a sealed container. The DoD crisis had just been the crack that released it all. But there was something else too. Something he'd only recently admitted to himself. "I was tired of being quiet," Marcus said. "I was tired of watching bad people succeed while good people got crushed. I was tired of fixing problems in silence and then watching other people get promoted for my solutions. I was tired of being invisible." Jennifer studied him for a long moment. "You know what's funny? I always thought you didn't care, that you were just one of those people who was happy staying in the background." "I was, until I wasn't." She nodded slowly. "For what it's worth, that algorithm you wrote, the one I took credit for, it was brilliant. I knew it then, and I've always felt guilty about it." She paused. "Well, maybe not always, but sometimes." It wasn't much of an apology, but it was something. Marcus accepted it with his characteristic nod. After Jennifer left, Marcus sat alone in the dimly lit office. It was past 8 p.m. Most people had gone home hours ago. He should probably leave too, but there was still work to do, always more work to do. His phone buzzed, a text from Robert Harrison. "Webb, need you at headquarters tomorrow at 8 a.m. Board wants to discuss your new position. Come prepared to negotiate." Marcus stared at the message. His new position. 6 months ago, he'd been a junior analyst making $72,000 a year. Now he was apparently negotiating with the board of directors. The quiet man who'd spent 7 years in the corner was about to become a power player. The question was, what would he do with that power? Marcus thought about all the other quiet people in the company, the developers who wrote brilliant code but couldn't sell themselves in meetings, the analysts who did the real work while their managers took credit, the administrative staff who kept everything running but were treated as interchangeable and invisible. He thought about the system that had made him invisible and how that same system was now trying to promote him into its highest levels. There was a bitter irony there. The company had ignored him when he was right. Now they were elevating him because he'd proven he could destroy them. But maybe that was the opportunity. Maybe the only way to fix a broken system was to get inside it, to take the power and use it differently. to build something better. Marcus opened a new document on his laptop. At the top, he typed, "Organizational Restructuring Proposal." Then he started writing. Because he'd spent 7 years watching how not to run a company. Now it was time to show them how it should be done. The 8 a.m. meeting was in the executive boardroom on the top floor, a place Marcus had visited exactly twice in 7 years, both times in the past 2 weeks. The room was designed to intimidate, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a table that could seat 30, leather chairs that probably cost more than Marcus's monthly rent. The board of directors was waiting. 9 people, mostly men in their 60s, representing billions in combined net worth. They'd built empires, crushed competitors, made fortunes. And now they were waiting for Marcus Webb, the guy they'd paid $72,000 a year to make spreadsheets. Harrison stood when Marcus entered. "Marcus, thank you for coming. I believe you know everyone on the board?" Marcus didn't, actually. He'd never been important enough to meet them before. But he nodded and took the seat at the head of the table, the seat usually reserved for the CEO. The gesture wasn't lost on anyone in the room. "Let's get to it," said Margaret Chen, no relation to David despite the shared surname. She was the board chair, a venture capitalist with a reputation for ruthlessness. "Mr. Webb, you've put us in an interesting position. You have leverage, substantial leverage. You could ruin this company with what you know. So let's negotiate. What's your price?" Marcus had spent the entire night preparing for this moment. He'd run scenarios, considered options, planned contingencies. He'd learned long ago that the key to any negotiation was knowing exactly what you wanted before you walked in the room. "I don't want money," Marcus said. Margaret raised an eyebrow. "Everyone wants money." "I want to restructure the company, complete organizational reform, and I want authority to make it happen without interference." The board members exchanged glances. Thomas Brennan, a silver-haired man who'd made his fortune in manufacturing, leaned forward. "You understand that's essentially asking us to give you control of the company?" "No. I'm asking you to give me control of the company's operations and culture. You can keep the strategic direction, the financial oversight, the board governance, but hiring, firing, compensation, project management, ethical standards, that's mine." "That's insane," said Victoria Park, the youngest board member at 45. "You're a junior analyst." "I was a junior analyst. According to the DoD, I'm now the person this company can't function without. You made me indispensable, and now I'm leveraging that position. That's how capitalism works, isn't it?" The room went silent. Marcus had just used their own logic against them. Harrison broke the tension. "Marcus, what exactly are you proposing?" Marcus opened his laptop and shared his screen. The document he'd worked on all night appeared on the large monitor, a 40-page proposal for restructuring Meridian Technologies from the ground up. "First, we eliminate the current management hierarchy. It's bloated, inefficient, and incentivizes the wrong behaviors. We move to a flatter structure with clear accountability chains. If you're a manager, your job is to support the people doing the actual work, not to take credit for it." He clicked to the next section. "Second, we reform compensation. No more arbitrary bonuses for executives while the people doing the real work get cost of living raises. Compensation will be tied to measurable outcomes and peer review. If your team succeeds, you succeed. If you're taking credit for other people's work, you get nothing." "This would require completely reworking our HR systems," Victoria objected. "Yes, it will take approximately 8 months. I've already designed the framework." Another click. "Third, we establish real ethical oversight, not a box-checking exercise, but actual accountability. Every project will undergo review for legal, ethical, and security implications. If there's a problem, we stop and fix it. No more move fast and break things culture that breaks laws and hurts people." Margaret was reading ahead through the document. "You want to establish an internal whistleblower protection program, report directly to the board. Anonymous reporting channels." "Yes, because the reason I had to collect evidence for 7 years is that there was no safe way to report problems. You'd have known about the security flaws, the financial irregularities, all of it, if there had been a system that protected people who spoke up. Thomas was shaking his head. This would make the company less competitive. All these oversight mechanisms, these processes, our competitors will move faster. Our competitors are going to have security breaches, lawsuits, and regulatory investigations. We're going to have sustainable growth. Which one sounds more competitive to you? It was a risk pushing back this hard. Marcus could see the board members bristling at his tone. He was a junior analyst lecturing billionaires on how to run a company. It was professionally suicidal, but Marcus had leverage, and for the first time in his life he was willing to use it. Let's say we agree to this, Margaret said carefully. What title would you want? COO? CTO? Director of Operations and Ethics, reports directly to the board, cannot be fired or overruled by the CEO except by unanimous board vote. That's more power than Harrison has, Victoria pointed out. Yes. Harrison, to his credit, didn't look angry. He looked almost relieved. What's my role in this new structure? Marcus met his gaze. You're actually good at the parts of your job that matter. Strategy, client relations, vision. You're terrible at management because you prioritize loyalty over competence. In this structure, you focus on what you're good at. I handle the rest. The room fell silent again. Marcus was asking for something unprecedented. Operational control of a $3.2 billion company, despite having zero management experience, based entirely on the threat of exposure and the promise of reform. It was the kind of demand that should have gotten him laughed out of the room. Instead, Margaret Chen smiled. You know what's funny? 3 months ago we were discussing succession planning. Who would take over when Harrison retires? We looked at every executive in the company, and they were all variations of the same type. Good talkers, weak operators, people who'd run Meridian into the ground within 5 years. She looked at the other board members. Webb is right. About all of it. Our management structure is broken. Our culture is toxic. We've been rewarding the wrong behaviors and ignoring the right ones. And if we don't change, someone else is going to do what Webb did. Except they won't be interested in fixing things. They'll just destroy us and profit from the wreckage. So you're saying we should let him do this? Thomas asked. I'm saying we don't have a choice. Webb doesn't need us to give him power. He already has it. The question is whether we're smart enough to channel that power into something productive. The board voted. It took 3 hours of debate, multiple recesses, and several phone calls to lawyers. But in the end, the result was unanimous. Marcus Webb, the quiet man who'd spent 7 years in the corner, was now the second most powerful person at Meridian Technologies. And unlike everyone who'd been promoted over him, Marcus had earned it the hardest way possible, by being right when everyone else was wrong, by working when everyone else was talking, and by finally speaking up when silence was no longer an option. As Marcus left the boardroom, his phone exploded with messages. News of his promotion had already leaked somehow. Congratulations from colleagues, questions from reporters, shock from people who'd forgotten he existed. One message stood out. From Maria in accounting. You're going to change things, aren't you? For real this time? Marcus stared at that message for a long time. Then he typed back, already started. Because he had. The hard part was just beginning. The announcement went out company-wide the next morning. Marcus had insisted on writing it himself, over the objections of the communications department who wanted to soften the message. But Marcus was done softening things. Effective immediately, Meridian Technologies is implementing comprehensive organizational reform. These changes will affect every department, every position, and every aspect of how we operate. If you're someone who's been doing good work in silence, your life is about to get better. If you've been coasting on politics and presentation, your life is about to get harder. We're building a company where competence matters more than charisma, where ethics matter more than short-term profits, and where the people doing the actual work get the actual credit. This will be uncomfortable, change always is, but it's necessary. The email was signed, Marcus Webb, Director of Operations and Ethics. The reaction was immediate and polarized. Roughly half the company celebrated. These were the people like Marcus, the quiet, competent ones who'd been overlooked and undervalued. They saw his rise as validation, as hope that things could actually change. The other half panicked. These were the managers who'd built careers on managing up instead of managing well. The executives who'd survived on charm and connections. The people who'd been taking credit for other people's work for so long, they'd forgotten how to do their own. Within 24 hours, 8 senior managers resigned. Within a week, it was 15. The exodus included some genuinely talented people who just couldn't adapt to a world where their old tactics didn't work anymore. But it also cleared out dead weight that had been dragging the company down for years. Marcus replaced them with people nobody had heard of. Mid-level engineers who'd been doing brilliant work in obscurity. Analysts who'd been submitting ignored reports. Administrative staff who'd been keeping departments running despite incompetent leadership. One of his first hires was Samuel Chen, also no relation to the other Chens. Apparently it was a common name. Samuel had been a security researcher at Meridian for 4 years, consistently flagging vulnerabilities and being consistently ignored by management, who found him difficult to work with. Marcus made him chief security officer. "You understand this is insane," Samuel said when Marcus offered him the position. They were in Marcus's new office, not the corner cubicle anymore, but a glass-walled space that he deliberately designed to be visible from the main floor. No more hiding in corners for either of them. "How is it insane?" Marcus asked. "I've been here 4 years. I'm 32. I've never managed anyone, and you want me to oversee security for a company with DoD contracts? You've been right about every security issue you've flagged. Management ignored you because you weren't good at corporate politics. I'm eliminating corporate politics. So yes, I want you to run security." Samuel stared at him. "Why me?" "Because for 4 years you've been doing what I did. Speaking up when you saw problems, being ignored, documenting everything anyway because it was the right thing to do. The only difference between us is that I finally stopped being quiet. Your turn." Samuel took the job. So did Maria from accounting, who became director of financial operations, and Rashid Ali, a developer who'd been stuck in a junior position despite having a PhD in computer science and a portfolio of innovations that the company had been profiting from for years, and Lisa Zhang, who'd been an executive assistant but had actually been doing her boss's job for the past 3 years while he took credit and she took notes. Marcus built a leadership team of people who'd been invisible. And together, they started tearing down the old Meridian and building something new. The changes weren't just at the executive level. Marcus had promised to reform the entire company, and he meant it. The first major initiative was the recognition reset. Marcus implemented a peer review system where employees could nominate colleagues whose work deserved recognition. The catch was that nominations had to be specific, not "Sarah is great," but Sarah identified and fixed a bug that would have cost us the Henderson contract. Within a month, patterns emerged. The same names kept appearing in nominations, people who'd been doing critical work in silence while their managers took credit. Marcus cross-referenced these names with promotion and raise history. In 70% of cases, these valuable employees had received minimal advancement while their managers had been repeatedly promoted. Marcus fixed it. Overnight, compensation was adjusted. People who'd been making $60,000 while producing $500,000 in value suddenly found themselves making what they were worth. Managers who'd been coasting on subordinate talent found their bonuses eliminated and their job security in question. The second initiative was open books. Marcus made previously hidden information transparent. How much everyone made, what projects were being worked on, how decisions were being made, which clients were profitable and which were money-losing vanity projects, what the actual security risks were in their products. It was radical transparency, and it made a lot of people uncomfortable. But it also made it impossible to hide incompetence or take unethical shortcuts. When everyone could see the data, everyone could see what was really happening. The third initiative was no more rock stars. Marcus banned the practice of celebrating individual executives as company heroes. No more profiles in business magazines about visionary leaders. No more keynote speeches where CEOs took credit for products they'd never touched. Instead, Meridian would celebrate teams and share credit honestly. "You're destroying the entire concept of leadership," Victoria Park complained during a board meeting 2 months into Marcus's tenure. "I'm destroying the cult of personality that passes for leadership," Marcus corrected. "Real leadership is about making other people successful, not taking credit for their success." "But people need heroes. They need figures to rally around. They need honesty. They need fairness. They need a system that rewards actual achievement instead of self-promotion." Not everyone agreed with Marcus's approach. Trade publications criticized Meridian's radical experiment. Recruiters from competitors called Marcus's team members, offering traditional promotions and traditional power structures. Some accepted, unable to adjust to a world where you had to actually do the work instead of just managing the people who did the work. But others stayed, and more kept joining. Because word spread. In an industry full of toxic cultures, impossible hours, and bosses who took credit for subordinate work, Meridian was becoming something different. A place where quiet competence was valued, where you didn't have to be loud to matter, where doing good work actually led to recognition and reward. 3 months into Marcus's tenure, Meridian won a major industry award for workplace culture. The irony wasn't lost on Marcus. 3 months ago, the culture had been so toxic that he'd compiled evidence of systematic ethical violations. Now they were being celebrated. But awards didn't matter. What mattered was the email Marcus received from a junior developer named Amy Park. "I've been here 6 months. Today my manager acknowledged my work in a company meeting, actually said my name and described what I did. My old manager would have presented it as his own idea. I literally cried in the bathroom afterward. Thank you for making this place different." That email meant more than any award ever could. But not everyone was happy with the new Meridian. And as Marcus was about to discover, changing a company's culture made enemies, dangerous ones. It started with small things. Anonymous complaints to HR about Marcus's leadership style. Rumors spread through Slack channels that he was building a cult of personality. Pointed questions during all-hands meetings about whether his reforms were sustainable or just disruptive. Marcus recognized the pattern. This was how corporate politics worked. Death by 1,000 cuts, whisper campaigns, plausible deniability. Someone was organizing opposition, but doing it carefully enough to maintain cover. He ran the data. Using the same analytical skills that had made him valuable in the first place, Marcus mapped the complaints, traced the rumors, identified the patterns. It took him 3 days of working late into the night, but he found the source. Richard Mallory, VP of Business Development. One of the few senior executives who'd survived the initial purge, mainly because he'd been traveling internationally during the reckoning and hadn't been implicated in any of the documented violations. He was smooth, charming, beloved by clients. He was also, Marcus now realized, terrified that the new Meridian would eventually expose that his success was built on a foundation of exaggerated results and subordinate talent. Marcus scheduled a meeting. Just the two of them in one of the small conference rooms. No witnesses, no recording, though Marcus suspected Richard would record it anyway. "You wanted to see me?" Richard said, all easy confidence and practiced smile. "I want to know why you're trying to undermine the reforms." Richard's smile didn't waver. "I don't know what you mean." Marcus pulled out his laptop and turned it toward Richard. On the screen was a network diagram, nodes and connections showing how rumors had spread, how complaints had been filed, how questions had been planted in meetings. All roads led back to Richard. "You're good at corporate politics," Marcus said. "Better than me, certainly. But I'm good at data analysis, and the data says you've been running a shadow campaign to discredit me and return Meridian to the old way of doing things." Richard studied the diagram. His smile finally faltered. "You can't prove any of this." "I don't need to prove it legally. I just need to show it to the board. They'll see the pattern. They'll know." "So what, you're going to fire me?" Accuse me of conspiracy? Richard leaned back, recovering some confidence. You know what happens if you do that? I'll go to the press. Tell them about your little coup, about how you blackmailed your way into power, about how you're running Meridian like a dictatorship, forcing out anyone who questions you. Go ahead, Marcus said quietly. Richard blinked. What? Tell the press. Tell them everything. The blackmail, the forced resignations, all of it. I'll corroborate your story. I'll add details you don't even know about. You're bluffing. I'm not. Because here's what else will come out. Why I had to resort to blackmail in the first place. The security flaws you knew about and ignored. The clients you lied to. The employees you exploited. All of it on the record, with documentation. Marcus leaned forward. See, Richard, you're thinking like the old Meridian. You think exposure is the threat. But I've spent 7 years being invisible. I've got nothing to lose by being visible. My reputation? I'm the weird, quiet guy who staged a corporate coup. That's already public. My career? I could quit tomorrow and have 10 job offers by evening. The DoD wants me. Google wants me. I'm only here because I actually believe in fixing this place. So what do you want? Richard's voice had lost its polish. I want you to stop. Stop the whisper campaign. Stop trying to turn people against the reforms. If you have legitimate concerns, bring them to me directly. If you can't work in the new Meridian, resign with dignity. But stop trying to poison this place back into what it was. Richard stood up. You think you're different from the old leadership, but you're just a different kind of tyrant, forcing your vision on everyone else. Maybe, Marcus acknowledged. But my vision involves everyone getting credit for their work, getting paid fairly, and not being exploited by people like you. So if that's tyranny, I can live with it. After Richard left, Marcus sat alone in the conference room. The encounter had shaken him more than he wanted to admit. Because Richard had a point, Marcus was forcing change, overriding opposition, using his leverage to push his vision. That was power, and power corrupted. Was he different from the executives he'd replaced? Or was he just another person using leverage to get his way? The question haunted him for the rest of the day, and as he walked through the office that evening, saying goodbye to the people working late, he wondered, at what point does the revolutionary become the tyrant? At what point does changing the system turn into controlling it? He didn't have an answer, but he knew that someone would eventually test him. Someone would push back hard enough that Marcus would have to choose between his principles and his power. And when that moment came, he'd find out what he'd really become. The quiet man who was dangerous, or just another loud man who thought he knew better than everyone else. The test came sooner than Marcus expected. It was Lisa Zhang, ironically, the former executive assistant that Marcus had promoted to director of client relations. She'd been one of his early success stories, someone whose talent had been hidden behind a support role, someone who'd flourished when given real authority. She requested a meeting. Her face was tight with stress when she entered his office. We have a problem, she said without preamble. The Axion Corporation contract. Marcus knew the Axion contract. It was Meridian's third largest client, worth $180 million annually. They made surveillance systems for law enforcement agencies around the world. What's the problem? Lisa pulled up a report on her tablet. I've been reviewing all of our client relationships as part of the ethics initiative. Axion is using our data analytics platform to build predictive policing systems. They're specifically targeting minority neighborhoods. The algorithms are biased, they know it, and they're selling it anyway. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Do we have documentation of this? Emails, presentations, everything. They're not even hiding it. They market it as high-efficiency targeting of probable offense zones. But the probable offense zones are always Black and Latino neighborhoods regardless of actual crime statistics. And we're providing the analytics platform that makes this possible. Yes, our technology is directly enabling discriminatory policing. And based on the contract terms, we could be liable if this goes public. Marcus reviewed the documentation. It was damning. Axion was using Meridian's platform to automate racism, and they were profiting handsomely from it. The question was, what should Meridian do about it? "We terminate the contract," Marcus said. Lisa nodded. "That's what I thought you'd say. But there's a problem. The contract termination clause requires 6 months' notice and includes a penalty of $40 million if we breach. And if we terminate, we have to provide reasoning, which means going public about what Axion is doing, which means they'll sue us for defamation and breach of confidentiality. So we're looking at $40 million in penalties plus potentially hundreds of millions in legal costs." "Yes, and that's if we win the lawsuit. If we lose, it could bankrupt the company." Marcus sat back in his chair. This was the test. This was the moment where principles met reality. The old Meridian would have looked the other way, counted the money, and let Axion do whatever they wanted. That's how companies became complicit in harm, one pragmatic decision at a time. But Marcus had built the new Meridian on a foundation of ethics. He'd promised that doing the right thing mattered more than profit. Now he had to prove it. "Schedule an emergency board meeting," Marcus said. "Tomorrow morning." The boardroom was tense. Marcus had sent the Axion documentation in advance so everyone knew what they were facing. Terminate the contract and risk bankruptcy. Keep the contract and be complicit in systemic racism. "This is exactly the kind of ethical oversight I warned about," Margaret Chen said. "We established your position to prevent this type of crisis, but now we're in one anyway." "Because the crisis was already here," Marcus replied. "This contract has been running for 3 years. We're already complicit. The question is whether we stop or keep going." Thomas Brennan shook his head. "Marcus, I admire your principles, but $40 million plus legal costs? That could destroy everything we've built. All the reforms, all the good we're doing, gone because of one contract." "Not one contract. The credibility of everything we've built. If we compromise on this, we're sending a message to every employee that our ethics are optional, that we'll do the right thing until it becomes expensive." Victoria Park looked at the numbers. "What if we quietly let the contract expire naturally? 6 months, we're out, no penalties, no lawsuit. 6 more months of enabling discriminatory policing," Lisa said quietly. 6 more months of our technology being used to target communities of color. How many people get arrested in those 6 months? How many lives get disrupted? And we just keep collecting our checks while it happens?" The room fell silent. Harrison spoke up. "There's another option. We could go to Axion, tell them we know what they're doing, threaten to go public unless they change how they're using our platform." "That's blackmail," Marcus said. "You of all people are going to complain about blackmail?" Harrison's tone wasn't cruel, just pointed. "You leverage this entire company into changing. Maybe we leverage one client into doing the right thing." Marcus hated that Harrison had a point. He'd used threats to force change before. Why was this different? Because it wasn't about fixing something broken. It was about preventing exposure of Meridian's complicity. It was about protecting themselves, not protecting the communities being harmed by Axion systems. "No," Marcus said firmly. "We don't threaten them. We terminate the contract, pay the penalties, and go public about why. We make it clear that Meridian won't be complicit in discriminatory technology." "That's corporate suicide," Thomas said. "Maybe. But it's the right thing to do." Margaret studied Marcus for a long moment. "You really mean that? You're willing to risk everything, the company, the reforms, all of it, on principle?" "Yes. Even though it might mean you lose your position? Even though it might mean returning to being invisible?" Marcus thought about that. If Meridian went bankrupt fighting Axion, he'd lose everything he'd built. The recognition, the power, the ability to make change. He'd go back to being nobody, the quiet man in the corner. And he realized he was okay with that, because the alternative was worse. The alternative was becoming the kind of person who knew the right thing to do and didn't do it because it was expensive. "Yes," Marcus said again. The board voted. It wasn't unanimous this time. Thomas and 2 others voted to keep the contract and avoid the financial risk. But Margaret, Victoria, Harrison, and 3 other board members voted to terminate. The next morning, Meridian sent a formal termination notice to Axion Corporation. By afternoon, Axion's lawyers had filed a lawsuit. By evening, the story had broken in the tech press. Meridian Technologies terminates $180 million contract over ethics concerns. The reaction was explosive. Some praised Meridian for taking a stand. Others called it performative virtue signaling. Competitors circled, trying to poach Meridian's other clients by arguing the company was unstable and driven by ideology over business sense. The stock price dropped 18% in a single day, and Marcus Webb, the man who'd spent 7 years being invisible, was suddenly the most visible person in corporate America. Interview requests poured in. Profile pieces were written. He was called a visionary by some, a reckless ideologue by others. Marcus ignored all of it. He had work to do, because terminating the Axion contract was just the beginning. Now they had to survive the lawsuit, rebuild client trust, and prove that a company could be profitable while also being ethical. It was the hardest problem Marcus had ever faced. And unlike the security flaws or the organizational reform, he wasn't sure he could solve this one. But he was going to try. Because that's what the quiet man did. He tackled hard problems, even when everyone said they were impossible, especially when they said they were impossible. Because Marcus Webb had spent 7 years being told he couldn't make a difference, 7 years being overlooked, underestimated, and ignored, and he'd proven them all wrong. The question now was whether he could do it again. If you enjoyed this story and want more content like this, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Share this video with someone who needs to hear about standing up for what's right. And remember, the quiet ones are always watching. Drop a comment below telling me what you think Marcus should do next time on the channel. She smiled at everyone, until she didn't. Another story about the person nobody notices until it's too late. You won't want to miss it.